Imagine being thrust into a nightmare that shatters everything you've worked for. You've spent your life building independence, working tirelessly to rise above the struggles of your past. You've built a stable life for yourself, one that reflects your hard-earned success. And then, one day, you check your mailbox and find a bill, a huge one. It's for a $1.2 million home, a home you didn't sign up for, a home you've never seen. And when you refuse to pay, your family sues you, accusing you of abandoning them and destroying the bond that's supposed to hold you together. Hi, I'm Emma Thompson, and at 32, I've worked my way up to becoming a financial analyst in New York City. I'm proud of what I've accomplished, a solid career, financial independence, and a sense of security that I built on my own. But none of it prepared me for the bombshell my family would drop on me. This is a story about betrayal, family manipulation, and standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. The moment I opened that envelope, my world stopped. There it was, a mortgage for a property in the Hamptons, a mansion no less, that was suddenly in my name. My signature was on it, but I hadn't signed a single piece of paper. It didn't make sense. How could this happen? Was it fraud or worse? Was this some twisted scheme by the people I trusted most, my parents? My own family was forcing me into this situation without my consent, and now they were accusing me of being the bad guy when I refused to take on their financial burden. As the days passed, I started to uncover the truth, something far darker than I could ever imagine. The house, my name, my credit, all of it was used without my knowledge. What I thought was a family's loving request turned out to be a well-orchestrated plan to manipulate and control me. This isn't just about money. This is about family dynamics, loyalty, and the boundaries we allow others to cross without realizing it. What happened next pushed me to my breaking point, but it also gave me the strength to fight for what was rightfully mine. Stick with me because this story is just getting started, and you won't believe what happened next. I never imagined my life would end up like this, not because I didn't dream big, but because I always worked so hard to avoid this kind of chaos. I spent my 20s fighting to build something solid for myself. I focused on my career, pushed through long hours, and made sacrifices in the name of independence. And finally, at 32, I thought I had it all figured out. A stable job, my own apartment, a growing savings account, and the peace of mind that I had earned everything on my own. But none of that prepared me for the bombshell my family was about to drop on me. I grew up in Long Island, in a quiet suburban neighborhood with my parents, Linda and John, and my younger sister, Emily. From the outside, we probably looked like the perfect family, your typical American dream. But if you look closer, you'll see the cracks in the foundation, the things I didn't fully realize until much later. I was the responsible one, the one who always did what was expected of her. I excelled in school, I worked hard to get into college, and I hustled every step of the way to build the career I dreamed of. But no matter what I achieved, it never seemed like it was enough. Then there was Emily, my younger sister, 4 years younger than me, and the complete opposite. She was the free spirit, the one who never had to work hard to get what she wanted. Growing up, it always felt like Emily was the favorite. When I worked part-time jobs during high school to cover my own expenses, she was given spending money without question. When I got a used bicycle for my 16th birthday, she got a brand new car. And when it came to college, my parents offered no financial help. I worked 3 part-time jobs, took out loans, and earned my way through. Meanwhile, Emily, who struggled with her studies, went from one school to the next, and my parents footed the bill for every single one of her educational ventures. It wasn't just the money, though. It was the emotional support that I never really got. When I graduated, landed my first job, and started my career in finance, it felt like a huge victory for me. But when I shared my accomplishments with my family, the response was always the same: praise for Emily. She was struggling with her job again or dealing with her mounting debt, and somehow my success felt secondary. The more I achieved, the less recognition I seemed to get from the people who were supposed to be proud of me. I'd be lying if I didn't feel resentment, but I never showed it.
Despite everything, I still craved my family's approval. I told myself that if I just kept achieving, kept working hard enough, they'd finally see me, not just as the responsible one, but as the person who mattered, who deserved their love and respect. And so, when I finally got that promotion, a huge milestone to become a senior financial analyst, I felt like I was on top of the world. After years of putting in the work, I was finally in a position where I could breathe, where I didn't have to worry about the next paycheck or whether I could make rent. It felt like a dream come true. But that dream came crashing down the moment I opened an envelope from a mortgage company, a thick, official-looking envelope. Inside, I found mortgage documents for a $1.2 million house in the Hamptons. My name was on it. The house? I'd never even seen it. The loan? I didn't remember signing any paperwork. My hands shook as I read the documents, struggling to make sense of it. This couldn't be happening. It felt like I was losing control of my own life in an instant.
Then my mother called. She asked if I'd received the papers, and that's when I started to piece it all together. When I received that envelope, it wasn't just a shock, it was a wake-up call. But it wasn't the first time my family had made me feel like I was being pulled in different directions. I'd always been the responsible one, the one who kept things together. And it seemed like no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I succeeded, it was never enough. Never enough to earn the kind of love and appreciation I so desperately wanted from them. Growing up, I could never escape the feeling that my parents had always held a special place in their hearts for Emily. They'd never say it out loud, of course, but it was in the little things. While I was doing everything by the book, staying up late, working weekends, sacrificing my personal life to get ahead, Emily seemed to coast by without any effort. I never resented her for it, not at first, but I saw the imbalance, and I knew it wasn't just about money. It was the way they treated us. When I came home with A's, my father would ask why I hadn't scored an A+. But when Emily got a C on a test, my mother would say, "Well, at least you passed, sweetie," and buy her a gift as a reward. I thought it was just me being too hard on myself, but deep down, I felt like I was always in competition with her, not for my parents' love, but for their respect. By the time I graduated college, I had already faced countless challenges on my own. I'd made sacrifices that would leave anyone exhausted, but somehow I did it. I put myself through school, took on massive loans, and worked multiple jobs just to cover living expenses. My parents? They didn't contribute a single penny. They did contribute, however, to Emily's education, paying her full tuition for 3 different colleges she never completed. I was proud of how far I'd come on my own, but when I looked back, there was always this nagging sense that my family wasn't quite as proud of me as they were of Emily. But I never showed it. I just kept going, kept pushing, because if there was one thing I was sure of, it was that I would be independent. I wouldn't let them control me. So when I landed that promotion, when I finally had a salary that reflected the years of hard work, I thought it would change everything. Finally, they would see what I had accomplished. Finally, they would recognize the sacrifices I'd made. But instead, the moment I told them about my promotion, the focus shifted instantly to Emily. "That's great, honey," my mother said, "but you know, Emily's been struggling with her bills again. Maybe you could help her out." My heart sank. I wasn't surprised. It had always been like this. Every achievement I had was always measured against Emily's lack of success. But this time, I was done. I was finally going to enjoy my success. I wasn't going to let them drag me into their financial mess again. Then came the phone call. It wasn't from Emily. It wasn't even from my father. It was my mother asking casually if I'd received the mortgage papers. I could hear the calm in her voice, but underneath it, I sensed something darker, something I hadn't expected. "What mortgage papers?" I asked, already feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. The next words felt like a punch. "We've decided it's time for Emily to have a home of her own. We've bought a house for her. It's in a nice neighborhood, and the mortgage is in your name. You've always done well, honey, so we thought it would be no trouble for you to help out." Help out? I couldn't breathe. Help out? How was this happening? I didn't even know the property. I hadn't agreed to anything. And yet here they were, making decisions about my finances without even asking me, without even consulting me. I'm not doing this, I snapped, my voice rising. I didn't sign up for this. I'm not paying for a house I don't know. But my mother's response chilled me. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Emma. Family helps family. Family helps family. It was like a punch to the gut. I had spent my whole life helping them, sacrificing my own happiness to make sure they were happy. And now they were doing this to me, forcing me into this situation without my consent, without a second thought. I couldn't believe it. But what happened next was the real shock. I reached out to the mortgage company, expecting to fix this misunderstanding. Instead, they told me they had my signature on file, that everything was processed and legally binding. My signature? I couldn't remember ever signing a single document related to this house. Something was wrong. Something was deeply wrong. I started going through the paperwork myself, pulling every document I could find, and that's when I found it, a forgery. They had used my old tax returns, my financial records from years ago, and signed my name without my knowledge. It was a betrayal on a level I couldn't have imagined. And what's worse, my parents admitted to it. They admitted to forging my signature. But in their eyes, it wasn't fraud. It wasn't a crime. It was just family helping family. I felt sick, but I wasn't done. This wasn't just about a house. This was about control. This was about them using me as a financial tool, manipulating me when they had no right to. I had to take a stand. I had to fight for my own life, my own future. But little did I know, that fight was only just beginning. The weight of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. How could they do this to me? How could my parents, my own parents, use my name, my credit, my life without even asking? My mind raced. It felt like everything I'd worked for was slipping through my fingers. I thought I'd built my life on my own terms, that I had finally gotten to a point where I could enjoy my success in peace. But now, it seemed like my past decisions were all being used against me, twisted to their advantage. I tried to call the mortgage company right away, but of course, it was after business hours. So I sat there, staring at the papers in a daze. Who could have done this? How could this happen without me knowing? My parents had never asked me, never talked to me about any of this. They hadn't even given me a heads up. It was like they'd decided that I was just a means to an end. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus, couldn't even think straight. I needed to figure out what was going on. I spent hours tracking down the mortgage company, getting passed from one person to another. Finally, I was told the same thing. Everything was in order. Everything had been processed. My signature was on file. That's when the anger set in. I called my parents, trying to hold my voice steady, but inside I was shaking with rage. Why didn't you ask me? I demanded. Why didn't you tell me what you were doing? You've used my name without my permission. This is fraud. My father's voice on the other end was calm, too calm. Now, Emma, don't make a scene. We're just trying to help Emily. You're doing well in your career. This won't be a problem for you. It was like he didn't even see the severity of what they had done. I could barely contain myself. This is a problem, Dad. You've put me in a position where I'm legally bound to a house I know nothing about. You've crossed a line that I can't just ignore. And that's when the truth really started to sink in. This wasn't about helping Emily. This was about control. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd taken my freedom. My family had built a cage around me, all disguised as love. They didn't care about the consequences of their actions. They just assumed I would clean up their mess. They assumed that I would fix it. But I wasn't going to fix it this time.
I went back to the mortgage documents, my hands trembling as I scanned the pages again. Something felt off, something that I had missed in my initial panic. There it was, the forgery. My signature was not just a little off, it was a complete copy of one of my old signatures from years ago, taken off some tax documents my parents had kept on file. It was clear now. They'd gone through my records, used my old signatures, and forged everything. They had been planning this for who knows how long. I felt sick, betrayed, furious. Then came the real shocker. I picked up the phone again, this time calling my mother. I didn't want to, but I had to know the truth. "Did you forge my signature?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable pause. And then she spoke, almost casually. "We did what we had to do, Emma. It's for Emily. You've always been the strong one, the responsible one. You can handle this." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. "This is fraud," I yelled. "You've committed a crime in my name, and you expect me to just accept it?" "Oh, stop making a fuss," she replied, like it was nothing. "It's just a house, Emma. Family helps family, you know that." Family helps family?
The words echoed in my head as I hung up. I had to remind myself that this wasn't just about a house. It was about a lifetime of manipulation. It was about how my family had used me for their own benefit, and how I had been too blinded by the need for their approval to see it. I couldn't let this go. I wouldn't let this go. I had spent too many years letting them dictate my life, too many years allowing them to shape my decisions for me. But this was different. This was the line they couldn't cross. The following day, I contacted a lawyer. I needed legal advice, real legal advice. I had no idea where to start, but I knew one thing. I couldn't back down now. I couldn't just sit by and let them destroy my future for their own convenience. I needed to protect myself. That's when the real battle began. I started gathering evidence, working with my lawyer to piece together what had happened. Emails, tax records, the forged mortgage documents, they were all part of the puzzle. As I looked through everything, it became clearer than ever. My family wasn't just asking for help, they were demanding it, using my success as a tool to control me. And I was done. I was done being their ATM. I was done being their safety net. But what I didn't know was that my parents weren't going to just back off. They had their own plans, and they weren't going to stop until they had me exactly where they wanted me, compliant, submissive, and under their control. The war had begun. I couldn't sit back anymore. It had gone too far. I tried to reason with myself, tried to convince myself that maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed, but deep down, I knew that what my parents had done was crossing a line I couldn't ignore. So I called them. I had to face them, confront the situation head on. I couldn't let them control my life any longer. That evening, I drove to their house in Long Island. My heart was pounding in my chest the entire way. I knew what I had to say, but I didn't know how they were going to react. What I did know was that I couldn't just let this slide. As I parked in front of their house, I looked at the familiar facade of the home I grew up in, and for the first time, it felt foreign, like a house of cards ready to collapse. I rang the doorbell, and when my mother opened the door, I could already see the tension in her eyes. She didn't even ask how I was. She just let me in, as if nothing had changed, as if she hadn't just forged my signature on documents that could ruin my life. The moment I stepped inside, my father was sitting in the living room, reading the newspaper like nothing was amiss. Emily was nowhere in sight, which, in hindsight, wasn't a surprise. She was always conveniently absent when things got messy. I didn't waste any time. "I know what you've done," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. My father looked up, pretending like he didn't know exactly what I was talking about. "What are you talking about, Emma?" he asked, the calm in his voice like a veil covering the truth. I slammed the mortgage documents onto the coffee table. "This,
You've used my name without my permission to buy a house for Emily. You forged my signature. This is fraud." For a moment, there was no response. My mother stood frozen, her face turning pale. Then my father spoke again, his tone dismissive. "Oh, Emma, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You know this is for Emily. She needed help, and you've always been the responsible one. You can afford it, and honestly, it wouldn't even affect you." It was as if he wasn't even hearing me. This wasn't about money to him. It was about control. They'd made me feel like I had no choice but to help, to sacrifice my own life and future to bail Emily out, just like I had done countless times before. But this was different. This wasn't a loan for a car or a few $100 to fix her bills. This was a house, $1 million house that I had no say in. I couldn't contain my frustration anymore. I didn't agree to this. You didn't ask me. You went ahead and forged my signature, and now you're asking me to pay for something I had no part in. How is that even possible? My voice cracked, but I didn't care. You've crossed a line, and I'm not going to let you manipulate me into doing what you want anymore.
My mother stepped forward, her expression shifting from calm to defensive. "Don't raise your voice, Emma. This is just family. You've always been the strong one, the one who can handle everything. We're not asking you to do anything unreasonable. You've always been the one who does well, and Emily, she needs a chance, just like you had a chance." Her voice was cold, almost rehearsed. She wasn't sorry. She didn't see anything wrong with what they had done. "You think I don't understand?" I shot back. "I get that Emily needs help, but I need help too. I didn't get a dime from you when I was struggling, when I had to work 3 jobs just to pay my bills. You paid for Emily's college tuition. You've bought her cars, set her up in apartments. And when it was my turn to succeed, you didn't even bat an eye. But now you think it's fine to just use me when you need something? No, this is not how it works." I could see the defensiveness in my parents' eyes. My father shifted in his chair, uncomfortable with the confrontation. My mother crossed her arms, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker in her expression. Maybe guilt, maybe fear, but it was quickly replaced by that same cold indifference. "We did what we thought was best for the family. We didn't ask you because we knew you'd say no. You've always been so hard-headed about these things." The words stung more than I expected. It wasn't just about money. It was about the years of emotional neglect, the years of my parents prioritizing Emily over me, of treating me like I was just a tool to fix their problems. But I wasn't going to let that define me anymore. "I don't care what you thought was best," I said, my voice steady. "This is about my life, my future, my choices. You can't just make decisions for me anymore. I'm done." The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. My mother's face turned red, and for a split second, I saw her expression waver, like she didn't know how to respond. But she quickly recovered and spoke again, this time with a hint of anger in her voice. "If you walk out that door, Emma," she said, her voice low and cold, "you won't be part of this family anymore." I stood there, my heart pounding, every nerve in my body screaming. The finality in her words was a blow I didn't expect. But in that moment, something inside me clicked. I realized that I had spent my entire life trying to prove my worth to these people, trying to earn their approval, their love. But it wasn't worth it anymore. Not if it meant losing myself in the process. I grabbed my purse and stood up. "I'm already gone," I said, my voice unwavering. "If being part of this family means letting you destroy my future and break the law, then maybe I don't want to be part of it anymore." With that, I turned and walked out the door. The weight of what had just happened sank in as I drove away from my parents' house. My heart pounded in my chest, and my hands trembled on the steering wheel. I had just walked away from my family. I had just told them I was done. No matter how many times I tried to replay the conversation in my head, I couldn't undo it. I had made my choice, and now there was no going back. For the first time in my life, I truly felt alone.
The bond I had with my family, the bond I had always fought to maintain, was shattered. But deep down, I knew that it was their actions that had destroyed that bond, not me. I had tried for so long to be the daughter they wanted, the sister they could rely on. But in the end, all I had been was a source of financial support, a tool to fix their mistakes. I couldn't help but replay the words my mother had said to me. "If you walk out that door, Emma, you won't be part of this family anymore." Those words echoed in my mind, and for a moment, I felt the sting of what they really meant. Was I really willing to lose everything I had ever known for the sake of standing up for myself? Could I handle the isolation that would come with cutting ties with them for good? But I had no choice. I couldn't keep letting them use me like this. They had manipulated me for years, taken my independence for granted, and used my financial success as a way to fill the gaps in their own lives. The mortgage, the forged signatures, it was just the final straw in a lifetime of emotional manipulation. And now it was time to take action. The next day, I went to a lawyer's office. I knew I couldn't handle this alone. The documents, the signatures, the fraudulent mortgage, everything had to be untangled legally. I wasn't just fighting to get out of a mortgage, I was fighting to protect my future, my financial security, and my sanity. At the lawyer's office, I sat across from a woman named Rachel Goldstein, a seasoned attorney who specialized in financial fraud. She listened to my story with a mix of disbelief and concern, her expression tight with empathy as I recounted everything that had happened. As I spoke, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I was finally telling someone the truth, telling someone who wasn't part of my toxic family dynamic. Dread because I knew the road ahead would be long, messy, and emotionally exhausting. Rachel didn't mince words. "This is serious, Emma," she said, her voice calm but firm. "What your parents did is fraud. It's identity theft, and you have every right to press charges." I could hear the weight of her words in my chest. I had never imagined that my own family could be capable of something so malicious. But here I was, sitting in front of a lawyer, trying to protect myself from people who were supposed to love me. Rachel's advice was clear. Gather everything. Every document, every email, every text message. We needed proof that my signature had been forged and that my family had intentionally manipulated me. My heart sank as I thought about the process. This wasn't just about a signature on a piece of paper. It was about proving that my parents had planned this, had intended to trap me in a financial mess I had no part in. But as I started to gather the evidence, something even more horrifying came to light. Text messages, emails, my father and mother talking about me like I was just a tool, a means to an end. One message from my father to my mother read, "Emma will never agree to this if we ask directly. Better to move forward and present it as a fait accompli. She'll never let Emily down." Another message from my mother said, "Once the papers are signed and Emily is settled in, what can she really do? She'll never make waves. She won't let her sister be homeless, no matter how much she complains." The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't a family emergency. This was a premeditated plot. They had been planning this behind my back, thinking they could manipulate me into doing what they wanted. My heart raced as I sat in my apartment, reading through the texts and emails. Every word felt like a slap in the face. They didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as a bank account, a safety net, someone to clean up their mess. I couldn't believe what I was reading. How had they become this way? How had they turned on me like this? These were people I had spent my whole life trying to please, trying to gain their approval. And now they had not only stolen my identity, but were trying to ruin my life. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. But there was no time for anger now. I had to act. I couldn't let them get away with this. I had to take back control of my life. I called Rachel the next day, my voice determined. We need to file this. We need to get the mortgage company involved. We need to make sure that my name is cleared and that my parents can't do this to anyone else." Rachel agreed, but she warned me that it wouldn't be easy. "This is going to be a long fight, Emma. Your parents are not going to back down easily, but you're doing the right thing. You're not just fighting for your financial freedom, you're fighting for your dignity." And that's when I realized this wasn't just about a mortgage. It was about taking back control of my life, about standing up for myself, about saying no to the people who had tried to manipulate me for far too long. And I wasn't going to back down. The next few weeks were a blur of legal jargon, sleepless nights, and a growing sense of unease that never seemed to leave me. I had gathered all the evidence, texts, emails, mortgage documents, but now the real fight was just beginning. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting to keep my future intact, to protect everything I had worked so hard for. The hardest part was the nagging thought that I was about to go up against my own family in a way I never imagined possible. The lawyer I'd hired, Rachel Goldstein, was a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who specialized in financial fraud. The moment we met, I knew I was in good hands. She wasn't here to sugarcoat anything. She was here to win. But the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. We both knew that.
The first step was notifying the mortgage company. I had to make it clear that I was not responsible for the loan, that I had never agreed to this mortgage, and that my signature was forged. Rachel had me send certified letters to the company, including a sworn affidavit stating that the signature on the documents wasn't mine, along with the evidence of the fraud. It felt surreal, typing those words. I was legally separating myself from something my own parents had put me in, but at the same time, it felt like I was finally doing something for myself. For once, I wasn't allowing myself to be used. The hardest part was calling the mortgage company and explaining the situation. I could hear the skepticism in the agent's voice as I laid out the facts. She asked if I had been involved in the decision to purchase the house or if I had any previous discussions with my parents about it. "No," I said firmly. "This is all a lie. My signature was forged, and I had no knowledge of this mortgage until I received the documents in the mail." The agent promised to look into it, but I could already sense the doubt in her voice. It would take time, weeks, maybe even months. In the meantime, the mortgage was still technically in my name, and every passing day made me feel more trapped. My credit score was already taking a hit, and I could feel the weight of the situation hanging over me like a cloud. I called Rachel again the next day. "What if they don't believe me? What if they don't take this seriously?" I asked, my voice filled with frustration. I knew it wasn't just the mortgage company I was up against, it was my own family. Rachel was calm. "We'll fight this. They can't just put you on the hook for a loan without your consent, but we have to be patient. The system takes time, but we'll get there." But patience was the last thing I had. Every time I thought about it, the more angry I became. They had done this to me, my own family, and now they were forcing me to fight for what was right. It felt like I was the one being punished for doing everything the right way. The next blow came in the form of an email from my father. It was short, but it made my blood run cold. He claimed that I was making a mountain out of a molehill, that I was being overly dramatic, and that they had only wanted to help. My stomach churned as I read the words. How could he say that? How could he dismiss everything they had done? But what angered me more was that it wasn't just an email. It was an attempt to manipulate me once again, to make me feel guilty, to make me feel like I was in the wrong. The following day, my mother called. Her voice was cold, even more so than usual. "You're making a huge mistake, Emma," she said. "We're just trying to help Emily. You've always been so independent, so cold to your sister. Can't you see how much she's struggling? You've been successful, and you're just turning your back on family." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not turning my back on anyone. I'm turning my back on you using me. I didn't ask for this, and I'm not going to clean up your mess anymore." That night, after I hung up with my mother, I felt a strange mixture of anger and relief. It wasn't over, far from it, but for the first time, I felt like I was standing up for myself. For so long, I had been the one to fix things, the one to help, the one who took responsibility. But not anymore, not this time. The legal process was slow, agonizingly slow. Weeks passed before I received any real updates. I continued to deal with the fallout from my family's constant emotional manipulation, but at least now I had a plan. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I wasn't going to let their actions destroy my life, my career, or my future. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming everything that was mine, and there was no turning back. The hardest part was yet to come, the inevitable confrontation in court. I could already feel the weight of that looming over me. I wasn't just fighting for my financial security anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, my independence, and my right to be treated as an equal. But no matter what happened, I wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. The battle had only just begun, and I was ready for it. The day of the hearing arrived, and I felt a knot in my stomach that I couldn't shake. I had been dreading this moment, but I knew it was necessary. This wasn't just about a mortgage. It wasn't just about money. This was about setting a boundary, about standing up to the people who had used me for years and refusing to let them continue to manipulate me. But as I sat in the courtroom, I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that had led me here. The room was cold, sterile, and intimidating. I arrived early, trying to collect my thoughts, but my mind kept racing. I was about to face my parents in front of a judge in a public forum, and I knew that it wouldn't be easy. They weren't going to just accept this. They would fight, just like they always did, and they wouldn't care who they hurt in the process. Rachel, my lawyer, was calm and composed as always. She had walked me through everything I needed to know, preparing me for the court proceedings, making sure I stayed focused on the facts. Don't let them draw you into an emotional argument, she had warned me. This is about legal facts, about the evidence. Stick to that and we'll be fine. As the court session began, the tension in the room grew thicker. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, entered the room. She glanced at all of us briefly before sitting down. "Let's get started," she said firmly, and the proceedings began. The first to speak was my father. He stood up and gave his statement, acting like he was the concerned parent trying to do what was best for his family. I could feel the bile rise in my throat as I heard him spin his version of the story. He claimed that he had acted in good faith, that he had been trying to help me and Emily, and that I should be grateful for what they had done. This was a family decision, he said, his voice smooth and controlled. We didn't think Emma would mind. She's always had a good job. We thought she would understand. I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my composure. The lies were so blatant, and yet I knew he believed them. He wasn't trying to protect me. He was trying to cover up the truth. And he wasn't going to stop until he had manipulated the entire system to his favor. When it was Rachel's turn to speak, I felt a small sense of relief. She was well prepared. She outlined everything clearly, pointing out the forgery and how my parents had gone behind my back. She didn't let them get away with anything. "Your Honor," she began, looking directly at the judge, "this case is about much more than a forged signature or a fraudulent mortgage. It's about the violation of trust, the exploitation of a family member, and the clear disregard for consent. What these documents show is not just an error, it's identity theft." The courtroom was silent as Rachel laid out the facts. She presented the forged documents, the emails, the text messages from my parents confirming that they had been planning this for months. My heart pounded in my chest as the truth unfolded, piece by piece. For the first time in my life, I was hearing my family's actions laid bare, and it was terrifying. Then it was my turn to speak. My voice felt small, but I knew I had to say something.
Your Honor, I've worked my entire life to build a future for myself. My parents never supported me financially, and I didn't expect them to. But they didn't have the right to take control of my future like this. I did not sign these documents. I did not agree to any of this. I was manipulated, and now I'm here fighting for what's mine. I could feel the tears threatening to spill, but I fought them back. This wasn't the time for emotions. This was the time to stand up for myself. I couldn't let them continue to pull the strings of my life. I couldn't let them win. The judge listened carefully, and after both sides had spoken, she looked over the evidence. I could see her writing down notes, processing everything. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm. I've reviewed the evidence in this case. The documentation provided by both parties is clear, and I'm concerned by the forged signatures and the lack of consent. My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I thought she might rule in my favor, but I knew better than to get my hopes up too soon. The judge paused, looking at both my parents and me. My ruling, she continued, is that the mortgage will be removed from Emma Thompson's name immediately. She is not responsible for any payments made toward the property. The case against her is dismissed. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. It felt like the ground beneath me had finally solidified. But the real shock came when the judge turned to my parents. As for the actions you've taken in this case, I am referring this matter to the authorities for further investigation. Forgery, identity theft, and fraud are not matters to be taken lightly. You will be held accountable for your actions. The room was dead silent. My parents' faces went pale. My father looked like he had just been slapped. My mother, who had been so confident earlier, now looked like she was shrinking in on herself. But even then, I could see the flicker of defiance in their eyes. They had underestimated me, and now they were facing the consequences of their own manipulation. As we left the courtroom, I felt a sense of relief flood over me. The weight of the legal battle had been lifted, but the emotional toll was far from over. I had won, yes, but at what cost? My family was still there, still clinging to their version of the truth. But for the first time, I didn't need their approval. I had stood up for myself, and that was enough. The days following the court ruling felt like a blur. I had won, but somehow it didn't feel like a victory. Yes, the mortgage was no longer in my name, the case against me had been dismissed, and the judge had ruled in my favor. My family's manipulation had been exposed for what it truly was, and I had taken back control of my life. But despite all of that, there was a nagging emptiness inside me that I couldn't shake. I had expected relief, but what I got was isolation. The weight of the situation, the lies, the years of emotional neglect, it all hung over me, and I wasn't sure how to move forward. I had won in court, but in my heart, I felt like I had lost something much more important: my family. The first blow came when I checked my phone the morning after the ruling, a text from my mother. "You've made a huge mistake, Emma. We tried to do what was best for the family, and now you've destroyed it." It was like a dagger to the chest. She didn't see what she had done wrong. She didn't see how her actions had violated every boundary I tried to set. She saw me as the villain. I didn't respond. I couldn't. There was nothing I could say that would change her mind, nothing that would make her understand how deeply betrayed I felt. The emotional manipulation was still there, lingering, even after the legal victory. Later that day, my father called. I didn't pick up at first. I wasn't ready to hear whatever justification he had. But after a few hours, I felt a strange compulsion to listen, so I did. "Emma," he said, his voice heavy, "I hope you know that this isn't over. Your mother and I are still your family, no matter what. You've always been the strong one, but this could tear us apart, and I don't want that." I almost laughed, bitterly. "Tear us apart?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You've been tearing me apart for years, Dad. You just don't see it." There was silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought he would apologize, that maybe he would finally see the damage his actions had caused. But instead, he just sighed. I can't believe you're doing this. I don't know if I can ever forgive you." The words stung, but they didn't break me, not anymore. For the first time, I realized that I didn't need their forgiveness. I had spent my whole life trying to earn their love, to earn their approval. But now, I understood that it wasn't my job to fix their problems, to make them happy at the expense of my own well-being. I didn't call them back. I didn't reach out to apologize or explain myself. I knew that wasn't going to fix anything. My family had made their choices, and I had made mine.
The emotional fallout was harder to deal with than I expected. There were days when I felt like I had been abandoned, days when I questioned if I had done the right thing. It wasn't easy, waking up every day knowing that I was standing alone. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't truly alone. I had my friends, those few people who had always been there for me, who didn't expect anything from me except honesty and support. They were the ones who celebrated my victories, who listened to my struggles without judgment. They had been my family when my real family failed me, and I was starting to see that they were the ones I needed in my life, not people who saw me as a resource. As weeks passed, I started to rebuild, not just my finances, but my emotional well-being. I threw myself into my work, into projects that I had put off for years. I started taking care of myself, something I had neglected for so long. I went to therapy, worked on my self-esteem, and began to understand just how much I had sacrificed for people who didn't appreciate it. I also took small steps to distance myself from my parents. I didn't block them, but I stopped responding to their calls and texts. I didn't feel guilty anymore. I couldn't keep enabling the dysfunction. It was painful, but it was necessary. I needed to set boundaries to protect my heart from their manipulation. A few months later, I received a letter from the mortgage company confirming that the loan had been officially removed from my name. It was a small victory, but a significant one. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight of that debt, of my parents' expectations, was no longer hanging over me. In the months that followed, my relationship with my parents remained distant. I never got the apology I hoped for, and I never received their approval for the choices I made. But that was okay. I had learned that my happiness didn't depend on them. I was finally free to live my life on my terms. I had spent so many years trying to prove my worth to my family, trying to earn their love and respect. But now I realized that I didn't need their validation to know my own value. The journey wasn't over, but I was finally on my own path, one that was mine to choose, and I was never going to let anyone take that away from me again. It's strange how the hardest decisions in life often end up being the ones that change you the most. The decision to stand up for myself, to break free from the manipulative hold my parents had on me, it wasn't easy. It wasn't even something I wanted to do at first. But now, looking back, I can say it was the best decision I ever made. I'd spent years trying to earn their approval, trying to meet their impossible standards. But in the end, I realized something important. My worth doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion of me, not even my family's. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. No more phone calls that drained me emotionally, no more texts that made me question my own self-worth. I was no longer living my life for someone else's expectations. I was living it for me. The hardest part, though, was learning to let go. Letting go of the idea that I needed my parents' validation to feel successful. Letting go of the hope that one day they would finally see me for who I was. Someone who had worked incredibly hard to get where she was. Someone who deserved to be treated with respect. I had to let go of the dream of them changing because that wasn't something I could control. And let me tell you, that wasn't easy. For weeks, I found myself questioning whether I had done the right thing. Was I too harsh? Was I being selfish? But then, I remembered all the years of emotional neglect, all the times I had sacrificed my happiness for them, only to be left feeling unappreciated.
I remembered the nights spent awake, worrying about how to pay bills while they showered my sister with gifts. I remembered the feeling of suffocation, as though I was constantly expected to give more than I could. So, no, I wasn't being selfish. I was being honest with myself. I wasn't just freeing myself from my family's control. I was finally setting boundaries that I had neglected for years, and it felt like I was breathing for the first time in a long time. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding, not just my career, but my emotional well-being. I connected with friends who actually supported me, who didn't try to manipulate me for their benefit. I started taking time for myself, reading, going for walks, learning to appreciate the small moments that I had always overlooked in the chaos of my past life. One of the most rewarding parts of this whole experience was realizing that I didn't need anyone's approval to succeed. I could thrive without the weight of their judgment on my shoulders. I had proven that to myself. I knew now that my happiness wasn't tied to what anyone else thought of me. It was mine to define, and I had the power to shape it.
Now I'm more confident than ever. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for personal growth. And it's something I continue to do, not just with my family, but in all areas of my life. I've also realized that sometimes standing up for yourself means walking away, even from the people you love most. And if you found yourself in a similar situation, I want you to know this: you don't have to let anyone control your life. You are worthy of respect, of love, and of boundaries that protect your mental and emotional health. Don't ever feel guilty for choosing yourself. If you found any part of my story relatable, or if you've learned something from my journey, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like, share this video, and subscribe to my channel. I'm sharing more stories like this, stories of personal growth, setting boundaries, and reclaiming your life. You're not alone in this journey, and I'm here to support you. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we're in this together. Thank you for listening, and remember, you have the power to take back control of your life. Keep fighting for yourself.